Hello my friends, and welcome to the channel for another Escape From Tarkov video. Believe me, I know better than anyone else that I've been a little negative about Tarkov lately. I really do love this game, honestly, but burnout and the sheer amount of hours that I've played this game over the last year and a bit have really made it hard to be objective and focus on what I do like about Tarkov, and what got me here in the first place. Obviously there was something there, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. No negativity, no cheeky remarks on the state of the game or what I wish would change or hope might be different someday, just a reflection on what I love about Tarkov, what got me hooked, and what has kept me playing for over 5,000 hours. These are in no particular order, just sort of off the top of my head as I could think about them. Starting with the thing that really stands out to me as one of Tarkov's greatest successes, the environmental design, and the feeling Tarkov captures of exploring a dangerous and unforgiving yet strangely beautiful world. From the first time I had ever seen a Tarkov clip on YouTube of Jack Frags playing Factory with a Keter way back before the game was even playable to the public, I was just floored by how cool the environments looked, and how much it looked and felt like a real place that you could go to. I remember being mesmerized by the dev diary videos showing how the developers went out to real places and scanned real things to put these maps together. And you can tell just by walking around any of them for a few minutes that they really do spend a lot of time trying to nail down a sense of atmosphere in each and every location in the game. It starts with the obvious things, like the size of the buildings and the thick foliage and trees that feel like a real forest, but really I think most of the atmosphere comes from the little details that are easy to ignore but tie the entire picture together. Things like the carefully placed bullet holes, explosion craters, and spent shell casings in areas where battles obviously happened, the piles of trash and crushed discarded food containers in abandoned houses, the hastily prepared defenses of the military base that give evidence of a sudden intense battle that didn't go so well, the graffiti scrawled everywhere by bored, desperate survivors, the dirty sleeping mats and blankets and discarded bandages in the water treatment plant, the disturbing images left behind by the cultists. It all adds up to make Tarkov, the place, into one of the most interesting parts of this game, and that's something that I think Battlestate will forever be remembered for. Of course, the environment isn't the only part of Tarkov that was modeled in exquisite detail, so now we turn our attention to one of the things that I'm sure has drawn a lot of other people to Tarkov in the first place: the guns. I'm gonna try and get through this entire section without complaining about the meta a single time, so wish me luck. But in all seriousness, despite any of the issues we might be able to bring up, no other game does guns quite like Tarkov does guns. I've played a lot of shooters in my day, but I've never felt so free to customize my weapons in my own way as I felt when I started playing Tarkov. I still remember just excitedly scrolling through the trader screens on my first wipe, looking at all these cool weapon parts and thinking to myself, goddamn, I just want to try them all. I guess you can kind of compare the feeling to what a car enthusiast might get when they're messing around with building their dream cars in a racing game. You're using real parts from real companies on real guns with realistic animations and insane attention to detail on the models. For someone like myself who lives in Canada, where the likelihood of ever owning a cool firearm gets closer to zero each and every day, Tarkov gets me about as close as I can ever get to building my own M4. I've spent hundreds of hours just obsessing over the guns in Tarkov, sometimes trying to make the new hottest min-maxed build, but a lot of the time just doing it for the sheer joy of building something that looks and feels cool. Yeah, the system has problems, and the community seems to have largely lost the desire to actually experiment or use anything outside a pretty narrow range of the best stuff, but that will never change the fact that Tarkov guns are, and may well forever will be, the best firearms in the FPS genre. Next up, I want to talk about Tarkov's sense of immersion and how the game basically requires you to be hands-on with everything about the game. This game rarely, if ever, does anything for you. There's no automatic reload, there's no automatic healing, your mags don't magically refill when you're reloading. Almost everything that happens in Tarkov is done with our own two hands, and that does wonders for making you feel like you're in the boots of your PMC. On that point, even the freedom we have in controlling our character and their movement is nearly unmatched in the entire FPS genre. Outside of Arma, and maybe Ready or Not, I really struggle to think of many other FPS games where you can do things like manually adjust your walking speed, or use a scroll wheel to adjust your height and be able to peek higher or lower when taking cover. How many other FPS games do you know that have 4 different styles of leaning, and the ability to blind fire over and around cover and lob grenades around corners without peeking? Sure, there's no vaulting, which is a problem that gets more annoying each wipe, but I struggle to think of any other FPS besides, like I said, Arma and maybe Ready or Not, that gives you so much control over small details of your character's movement. Some people will respond with, yeah, well, inertia killed the movement, but I disagree. Inertia and weight management just added another layer of decision making, forcing you to make tough calls on whether you want to be stacked with loot or mobile and lethal. How many other FPS games have you played where you make a decision to drop your backpack in the middle of an engagement to free up some mobility and take the fight to the enemy? Or drop it down a cliffside so you can jump down after it without breaking your legs? That's such a cool, immersive mechanic. Even outside of controlling your character, we also get to pick and choose our loadouts one piece at a time, often making decisions about what we carry and why for very specific reasons. Yes, drag and dropping things into your backpack does get tedious after a couple hundred hours, but I feel like it also creates this feeling that we physically interact with almost everything in Tarkov. You don't just walk over a body and pick stuff up. You don't just get generic resources or ammo in quotation marks put into your inventory. You find and interact with real things. You dig through boxes, you sort through individual filing cabinets, and load individual different types of ammo into different types of magazines one bullet at a time. And few other games have such a hands-on feeling about everything that you do. My next big thing that I love about Tarkov is pretty simple. The sense of scarcity, managing resources, and risk versus reward that comes with being able to lose everything at any time if you mess up. This is really a sliding scale, because depending on how long you've played, how good you are, how much you min-max your resources, and many other factors, scarcity can either feel like a crushing, oppressive force, or scarcity can be a distant memory as you load up your 75th RD704 and slick loadout of the day. While there's a never-ending debate about how much scarcity of resources should exist in Tarkov, I think almost everyone can agree that scarcity is a core pillar of what makes Tarkov exciting. In the early to mid-wipe, I find the resource game just absolutely fascinating. I love watching my stash grow from a disorganized pile of rusty old AKs and shotguns into a well-sorted armory stocked up with fresh weapons of war. I love that feeling when I have a real good day of raiding and say to myself, you know what? Maybe I will buy that hideout upgrade. I love the constant internal debate about whether I should buy out upgrades on the market or spend time farming for parts and save the money for gear later on. I love the immersion of loading my mags 50-50 with different ammo types to make my resources go farther. And in its own way, even the feeling of losing good stuff is kind of a thrill. It hurts in the moment, but it's only a game, and that frustration often just makes me more committed to getting out there and getting back what I just lost. I think the community has become so good at stockpiling and acquiring resources over the years that scarcity becomes less and less of an issue each day, but even so, when you do feel that sense of scarcity, I still find it pretty exciting. Another thing that I really enjoy about Tarkov is the way that the game's PvPvE sandbox, combined with all I just mentioned, creates the sense of the unexpected, and how that can often lead to you being forced to do rapid decision making and react to things that you often can't plan for too far in advance. Tarkov was one of the first games I had ever played that combined both AI enemies and player characters into one environment. It wasn't the first, that would be Dark Souls or The Division for me, but the way Tarkov only gives you one chance to succeed in any given encounter just makes this such an intense experience. When you enter a raid, you have a goal in mind most of the time, but so does every other player on the map, and you never really know where anyone is going to be or what they're going to be doing at any given time. You might have a simple goal to get in somewhere, grab something, and get out, but if you encounter a squad on the way, you suddenly have unexpected decisions to make. Do you open fire and try to eliminate the problem? Do you stay low in the tall grass and let them walk past? Do you risk saying something over VoIP and try to team up with them? Do you double back and just go the long way to stay away from them? Do you let them engage the scavs and then try to fight them while they're distracted and don't know where you are? Okay, now you've taken out the squad. Do you loot them out in the open and risk being sniped by the third party that overheard the gunfight? If their loot is good, do you abandon your task and head for extraction, or do you risk it all for one really big raid? A player scav rolls up on you while you're looting. Do you trust that he's friendly and share the loot? Do you take him out just on principle and keep all the spoils for yourself? An airdrop flies overhead. Do you risk going for it because you took out the only squad that you heard on this side of the map? Do you post up and cover it with a sniper and use it as bait? There's just so many things that can happen in a raid, dependent on so many variables, and it's influenced by both the game and the players and what decisions other independent parties make, not just you as a single player or the AI in its random patrols. And because of the way Tarkov flows, these things can happen so fast that you need to learn how to react quickly and efficiently. Every Tarkov player knows that adrenaline spike that happens when your quiet looting adventure suddenly explodes into a frantic firefight and your head is going 10 miles a minute to figure out how the hell you're gonna get out of this alive. All of these decisions aren't just in the raid either. They're influenced by how you prepared before the raid. What weapon did you bring? Did you bring a good scope or just a hollow sight? Do you have enough magazines for a big firefight? Did you bring enough meds to heal your 4th heavy bleed of the raid? Is your armor still good after one hit, or do you need to find a new vest? This almost never-ending game of action and reaction is one of my favorite things about Tarkov. And the more complex the game becomes, the more interesting a lot of these decisions become. In the future, we can only hope that map-to-map travel and larger environments make it even more exciting, and allow us to go on journeys that are longer and more in-depth than what we already have. The final point I want to make here is actually related to the community more than the game itself, and that is the Tarkov community's focus on learning and spreading knowledge. In some ways, yes, you can argue that it creates problems when people know so much about the ins and outs of a game that kind of prides itself on being mysterious. But I really think the learning curve of Tarkov has created bonds within the community that are extremely strong and inspired this sense of helping each other learn the tough lessons of Tarkov. I've played few other games that required the average player to learn so much about them before they can be effective and make good decisions. And this has drawn so many people together into communities both big and small. It's created friendships between people teaching each other about this game. It's enabled careers to spawn out of thin air for people willing to put that information together and spread it to the masses. It's created an insane level of engagement between the developers and the fans as we solve riddles and translate letters to figure out what's in the next update. I have never been part of a more tight-knit gaming community in my life, and it wouldn't surprise me if I never find another one in the future. And while things might look rough sometimes, we have this ability to embrace the suck together as a community, find the light at the end of the tunnel, and keep the faith that things will indeed get better. I'm sure that there is a lot more I could say here, but I think I've kind of hit the big points that I wanted to talk about. It's really easy to let burnout take hold and only focus on the bad, but lately, I've been trying to remind myself that the good is just as important. I love Escape from Tarkov, and I want to see it succeed, and not just for selfish reasons like keeping my YouTube channel alive. Tarkov has set a new precedent for what an FPS game can strive to be, and the sheer ambition on display from these cheeky developers who knew this path was not going to be easy, but have stuck to it anyway, that's enough to earn my respect and get me to root for your team. Does this mean that I suddenly will never rage after getting 2-tapped by 762 BP or rolled up from behind on the stairs with no audio? No. Does this mean I will stop nagging BSG to rebalance weapons and pay attention to the meta a little bit? No. I don't think we should stop being critical. I just think, especially for myself and people who feel the same kind of burnout, we should try and step back and remember that we once approached these issues from a constructive place and not always from such a cynical angle. What about you? What hooked you on Tarkov when you first started? What kept you playing and what brings you back? What are your top tips for others to keep positive while playing Tarkov and not let it get under your skin? Thanks for checking out the video. I've got links to my Twitch stream and Discord server down below for anyone interested. And until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City.